Hello everybody, welcome back. This is part 2 in a 3-part video series. This will be building the head for the rattlesnake. So here I've started off with a chunk of the color of clay that will surround the rattlesnake. What I'm doing is cutting the angle of an open mouth into the end here. You can see I'm gauging the angle by the photo that I'm trying to replicate. Often these types of detail I try to get fairly accurate, just because you're going to end up with a little bit of distortion, and the more accurate you can start off, the better your cane will appear in the end. So doing some refining. Once I'm happy with the angle, again, trying to make sure there's no air bubbles in any of these when I adhere 2 parts together. Still not entirely happy with the angle, as you can see, in the shape of the mouth. Again, this will represent the part in between the jaws, because they're going to be open jaws. Now I'm cutting a couple of notches for these will represent the fat part of the tooth. Here I'm being careful to slice down right where the tooth will go. And this will be the second tooth. You'll kind of see what I'm talking about once I start adding them. Again, being very careful to try to get everything quite accurate. All along the way, I'm adjusting and adding clay to, to make sure that I'm happy with it. A lot of complex cane making is just trial and error and trying to, get your parts exactly where they should be, and hoping that you've done a good enough job to, when it's reduced, that it looks pretty accurate. That's what I like anyway. So here I've added the tooth, which is white. Obviously I'm going to slice it here, and adding another chunk over the top. This will represent the fat upper part of the tooth. Now I'm going to add the part I cut off earlier back on over this. Keeping air bubbles out. I've got a few tools here that I really like using, that I've semi-modified. A few of them I've ground down to really sharp edges, or so that they have really sharp edges. because a lot of these tools actually come quite dull, more for using for, not polymer clay, but for other types of clay where you're not too critical, or it's not too critical if you get the angles, or if you can slice it completely. Nice. So here I'm adding the second tooth, kind of repeating the process of the first. And now I'm putting back on the first part I had sliced off. Always viewing from the side, and now, as you can see, I actually skipped a little bit of the video just because it's it's already quite a long video, and you get the basic idea of how I go about this. So now I've added, after I had the teeth, I basically just added this shape of, you can kind of see the shape of the upper part of the head and the lower part, the jaw. Adding to it as I need. I really quite enjoy making canes. It's quite satisfying if you can build a good cane, although I have, I've invested, a lot of money into canes that actually have failed entirely. I've had some canes that have gotten air bubbles in them, and maybe 10 to 15% is recoverable and works. That's always a bummer. And since you do have a lot of money into the clay, you want to try to make sure, if you're going to make a really nice cane, that you do your homework and study up a little bit on the animal, or whatever you're doing, and that way when you're done, you end up with something that's worth using, instead of wasting a lot of time and money on something that you're not happy with, because something this size, you'll end up with quite a bit of cane, and that could either be quite a bit of good cane or quite a bit of bad cane, depending on how careful you were along the building process. When I do a large cane like this, usually I try to make sure I have plenty of clay, because you almost always need much more than you ever think. This cane actually ends up weighing about 16 pounds before it's reduced. A fair amount of that is scrap clay that I've mixed together. I still like the color though. And so now I've started reducing the face. You can see here. So I ended up with a lot more face than I need, but I can always use the face on its own, or could do another snake cane and use what I have. So you can see here I end up with quite a bit of it. And then I'll be adding this to the body from part 1, and then surrounding all that body with this same bluish green color. So I go on continuing to cover this piece of face with more clay until I come up with a well-surrounded chunk of face, or head. I guess it's more of a head than a face, but You get the point. So further reduction. Now here's the body I'm going to be adding that face to. I'm going to slice a chunk that's around 5 inches out of that body, and I'll do the same with the face. Making a few adjustments here. Always a lot of adjustments along the way. And sometimes even after a cane is reduced, you can modify parts of it if you ended up with problems during the reduction process. You hope you don't, but it's not unheard of. Most of the canes I do are either animals or three-dimensional patterns. And now we're on to part 3, covering and reduction.